Episode 1, Ancient Evil Awakens. Part 1, The World Before. The morning sun cast long shadows across the mountain villages of the northern realm, painting the snow-capped peaks in hues of gold and amber. It was the kind of morning that made even the most weathered mountain folk pause in their labors to breathe in the crisp air, heavy with the scent of pine and wood smoke. Children's laughter echoed through the narrow streets of Thornhaven, the largest of the 7 villages that dotted the mountainside like pearls on a string. In the market square, old Martha haggled over turnips with the persistence of someone who had survived 70 winters.
3 copper pieces for this sorry lot? Highway robbery, Thomas.
She cackled, her weathered hands examining each vegetable with practiced scrutiny. Thomas, the merchant, rolled his eyes good-naturedly. This dance had been performed every market day for the past 20 years. Above them, on the highest terrace of Thornhaven, stood the Temple of Last Light. Its white marble spires reached toward the heavens like fingers in prayer, each one crowned with a crystal that caught and refracted the morning sun into rainbows. The temple had stood for 1,000 years, they said, built in the age when darkness last threatened to swallow the world. Inside the temple's vast hall, Father Aurelius knelt before the altar, his morning prayers flowing in the ancient tongue. He was a man of 60 summers, his once black hair now silver as moonlight, his face carved with lines that spoke of both laughter and sorrow. The sacred texts lay open before him, their golden letters shimmering in the candlelight.
Lux Aeterna, Custos Noster. Eternal light, our guardian.
As the final words left his lips, something changed. The candle flames, which had burned steady and true, suddenly guttered as if touched by an invisible hand. Aurelius opened his eyes, a frown creasing his brow. The morning birds, whose songs had provided a constant backdrop to his prayers, had fallen silent. The silence was absolute. Unnatural. Part 2, The 7 Seals. Aurelius rose slowly, his joints protesting after the long prayer session. He walked to the temple's great window, a masterwork of stained glass depicting the binding of the ancient evil. 7 seals, each a different color, formed a circle around a writhing mass of shadow. The artist had captured the moment of victory, when the combined forces of light had driven the darkness back to its prison.
The 7 seals of binding.
He murmured, tracing his finger along the glass. Each seal had a name, passed down through generations of temple keepers. The first seal, divine justice, white as fresh snow, pure and uncompromising. The second seal, mortal courage, red as heart's blood, fierce and unyielding. The third seal, nature's balance, green as summer leaves, patient and enduring. The fourth seal, celestial harmony, gold as sunshine, warm and nurturing. The fifth seal, eternal vigilance, silver as starlight, watchful and wise. The sixth seal, sacred unity, blue as mountain lakes, deep and binding. The seventh seal, final sacrifice, black as the void, absolute and irreversible. Legend spoke that these seals were not mere symbols, but actual barriers, woven from the very essence of creation itself. They held back something so terrible that even its name had been struck from all records. Only the title remained, the Dark Lord, he who dwells beyond. A tremor ran through the temple floor. Aurelius steadied himself against the window frame, his heart beginning to race. Earthquakes were not uncommon in the mountains, but this felt different. Wrong. The tremor didn't fade as earthquakes did. Instead, it grew, a rhythmic pulsing like a massive heartbeat. Part 3, The First Breaking. In the deepest chamber of the temple, a place where even Aurelius rarely ventured, the actual seal chamber lay hidden. Here, 7 stone pillars stood in a perfect circle, each one inscribed with runes that hurt to look upon directly. These were not replicas or artistic representations. These were the anchor points of the seals themselves, tethered to the physical world. The first pillar, white marble shot through with veins of light, began to crack. The sound was like thunder in a bottle, contained yet devastating. The crack spread from the base, spiraling upward in a pattern that defied natural physics. With each inch it climbed, the temperature in the chamber dropped. Frost began forming on the walls, and Aurelius's breath came out in clouds as he descended the spiral staircase, drawn by a terrible certainty. He burst through the chamber door, just as the first seal shattered completely. The explosion of light and sound threw him backward, his body slamming against the stone wall. Through tears of pain and disorientation, he watched as the fragments of divine justice, the first and strongest seal, dissolved into motes of dying light. They rose like inverse snow, disappearing into the darkness above.
No, No, this cannot be.
But it was. And worse was coming. The second pillar, carved from red granite, began to vibrate. The loss of the first seal had begun a chain reaction that Aurelius knew, with the terrible certainty of scholarship, could not be stopped. The seals had been designed to support each other, 7 pillars holding up the roof of the world. Remove one, and the others would fall like dominoes. Aurelius scrambled to his feet and ran. Not away from danger. There was nowhere in the world that would be safe if the seals failed, but toward the bell tower. The great bell of warning had not been rung for 300 years, not since the last significant threat to the realm. Its voice could carry across all 7 villages, down into the valleys, and even to the distant capital of Astoria. Part 4. The Chain Reaction. As Aurelius climbed the bell tower stairs, taking them 2 at a time despite his age, the second seal failed. Mortal courage died with a sound like 1,000 warriors' death cries condensed into a single moment. The red light that burst from the temple's lower windows looked like blood against the morning snow. The third seal, nature's balance, lasted longer. For 7 heartbeats, it held against the cascade of failure. Trees throughout the mountain suddenly grew wild, their branches reaching toward the temple as if nature itself was trying to hold the prison closed. Flowers bloomed and died in seconds. Animals fled in all directions, their instincts screaming warnings that human senses couldn't fully grasp. Then it too shattered, and with its breaking, all natural order ceased. Snow began falling upward. Water ran backward in streams. The sun seemed to flicker like a candle in wind. Aurelius reached the bell rope just as the fourth seal, celestial harmony, began its death song. The golden light that erupted from it was beautiful and terrible, like watching a star die. He pulled the rope with all his strength, and the great bell's voice rolled across the mountains. Dong, dong, dong. 3 peals for mortal danger. Then 3 more. Then 3 more. The pattern that every child learned, that every adult prayed they'd never hear. In Thornhaven's market square, old Martha dropped her turnips. Thomas's face went white as his grandfather's ghost stories suddenly became real. Mothers grabbed their children. Fathers reached for weapons that hadn't been used in generations. The 5th seal, eternal vigilance, shrieked as it died, a sound like eagles being torn from the sky. Silver light exploded outward, and with it came visions. Everyone within 50 miles saw the same thing for one terrible moment. A vast army waiting in darkness, pressed against a barrier that was rapidly crumbling. The 6th seal, sacred unity, broke in silence. It was perhaps the most terrifying breaking of all, for with it went the bonds between things. Brother turned to look at brother and saw a stranger. Wives forgot husbands' names. Children wandered from parents who suddenly seemed unfamiliar. The very concept of together fractured and split. Only the 7th seal remained. Part 5, the final seal. Aurelius descended from the bell tower to find chaos. Temple acolytes ran in all directions, some fleeing, others trying to secure sacred artifacts. Young brother Thomas, not the merchant, but a novice who had taken vows just last month, stood frozen in the courtyard, staring at the seal chamber entrance where impossible lights danced.
Father Aurelius! What's happening? The text never said that they never warned.
They warned. We simply chose to read them as allegory rather than prophecy.
He looked toward the chamber where the 7th seal still held, but barely. Black energy crackled around it like inverse lightning.
Gather everyone you can. Tell them to pray. To any god they believe in. To the memory of light. To hope itself. Tell them to pray.
The 7th seal, final sacrifice, was different from the others. It had been crafted not just from divine power, but from mortal will. 1,000 volunteers had given their lives to forge it, pouring their souls into the binding. It was the seal of endings, of last stands, of holding the line when all else failed. It held for 1 full minute after the 6th seal's destruction. 60 seconds that felt like 60 years. During that minute, the world held its breath. The upward falling snow paused midair. The backward flowing stream stopped, confused. The sun's flickering steadied to a deadly dim glow. It was as if reality itself was waiting to see which way the cosmic coin would fall. In that minute, Aurelius heard it. A voice from beyond the seal, speaking in a language that predated human speech, but that somehow, terribly, he understood.
7 times 7 centuries have I waited. 7 times 7 centuries have I prepared. Your gods are dead or fled. Your heroes are dust. Your hope is a candle before the hurricane of my wrath. I am the Dark Lord, the first shadow, the eternal night. I am your ending, and I am inevitable.
Then the seventh seal exploded. Part 6. The Gates of Darkness. The explosion was not of light, but of darkness. A darkness so complete it made midnight look like noon. It erupted from the temple's foundation, shattering the building like a child's toy. The beautiful spires toppled. The stained glass windows burst outward in a rainbow of deadly fragments. The altar split in two, and the eternal flame that had burned for a millennium was snuffed out like a birthday candle. But the physical destruction was nothing compared to what came next. Where the seal chamber had been, where the 7 pillars had stood in their protective circle, there was now a hole in reality itself. Not a crater or a pit, but an actual wound in the fabric of existence. Through it, one could see into a realm that should not be, a place of burning ice and freezing flame, where the laws of physics went to die. The gates of darkness had opened, and through them, the first figures began to emerge. They came slowly at first, as if testing whether the world could bear their presence. Shadows that walked upright, their forms constantly shifting between states of matter. They had shapes that suggested arms and legs and heads, but looking directly at them caused physical pain, as if the human eye rebelled against their existence. Then came the scouts, creatures more solid but no less terrible. They stood 7 feet tall, covered in scales that reflected no light. Their eyes were pits of green fire. Their claws left smoking grooves in the stone. They moved with purpose, fanning out from the gate in perfect formation, marking positions, preparing. Behind them, Aurelius could see the masses. Rank upon rank of nightmare-made flesh, waiting with the patience of the damned. There were thousands, tens of thousands, more.
Run. Everyone run. To the valleys. To the cities. Warn them all. The ancient evil has returned. The Dark Lord rises. Run.
Epilogue, the first hours. As the sun set on that terrible day, though set was perhaps the wrong word, as it seemed more to flee the scene, the 7 mountain villages were empty. Most of the inhabitants had fled at Aurelius's warning, streaming down the mountain paths like water from a broken dam. Old Martha had stayed behind.
70 winters I've lived. I'll not spend my 71st running from shadows.
She would be the first civilian casualty of the new war, but she would not go quietly. When they found her body 3 days later, there were 7 dead demons around her, and her last expression was not of fear, but of defiance. Father Aurelius also remained, not out of courage, but out of duty. He stood in the ruins of his temple, watching as the demonic army assembled with terrifying efficiency. He observed their patterns, counted their numbers, memorized their hierarchy. Someone had to witness. Someone had to warn the world precisely what was coming. As the first demon commander emerged, a being that introduced itself as the Herald of Darkness, Aurelius began to understand the true scope of the catastrophe. This was not a raid or an invasion. This was extinction.
By decree of the Dark Lord, Master of the Eternal Night, Breaker of Seals, and rightful sovereign of all that is, this world is forfeit. Its light shall be extinguished. Its people shall serve or perish. Its gods have abandoned it. Resistance is not futile, it is encouraged. Your suffering sweetens our victory.
It raised a staff topped with a skull that burned with black fire. The assembled demon army responded with a roar that shook the mountains.
Legio, Tenebrae, Infernus, Adernam.
The war between light and darkness had begun anew. But this time, the darkness came prepared. This time it came to win. As the demon army began its march down the mountain toward the unsuspecting kingdoms below, Aurelius whispered a final prayer. Not for victory, for he knew that was far from certain, but for the strength to resist, to fight, to rage against the dying of the light. Somewhere in the distance, a child cried. A dog howled, and the world trembled on the edge of an abyss from which there might be no return. The ancient evil had awakened, and it was hungry. End of episode 1.